Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my Week 9 Top 25 predictions. This week is kind of a stinker, but it still does have its heavy set of good games in it. Here's some of the games I've picked for games of the week. With that being said, a like and subscribe and help a comment always helps. Let's get straight into this. So, first game of the week, we got Florida State at Wake Forest. Sorry for the mic sounds. Florida State is really, really good, as we know. But the question is not Florida State. We know what they will do. It's Wake Forest. It's on the road at Wake Forest. And we've gotten to this point in the year where every team is going to deliver their biggest blow at the stronger undefeated teams or one-loss teams. They're going to start getting the undefeated teams, the strong teams, the little teams are going to play their darndest, best believe. It's at Wake Forest. I'm not going to call for the upset because Wake Forest's resume does suck. Their only relatively good game was at Clemson. They lost by 5. But yeah, this could kind of be like the same situation as Boston College, except not as terrible. Florida State is one of the teams that I can say is the most likely to go undefeated this year. They're one of my most likely teams. So give me Florida State, not covering, but still remaining undefeated. Oklahoma at Kansas. So I went ahead and checked the injury report on Jalen Daniels because honestly, what it looks like for me is without Jalen Daniels, Kansas isn't that good of a team. Reasoning being, obviously, Kansas went on the road to Texas, and they only put up 14 points. Jason Bean, the backup quarterback for Jalen Daniels, was 9 for 21, 136 yards and a touchdown. That 58 yards of that and the touchdown came off of one pass, a deep bomb. Take that away, he played awfully. So, honestly, and as well, another example, yes, he played Oklahoma State on the road to a 7-point game. But they were up 32-24 at the start of the third quarter, and Jason Bean went silent. He went silent. He still had a good game, but going that quiet for almost 2 quarters ended up giving Oklahoma State the victory. I see inconsistency in this quarterback, and I just don't see him getting it done against Oklahoma. This, however, was one of the games I could see Oklahoma losing. I don't really see him losing any other game. Maybe at Oklahoma State was another one I was talking about. That one's starting to definitely rise up. But as long as Jalen Daniels is out, give me Oklahoma. I still think Kansas could provide us with a good game because it's at Kansas. It's a big game. Kansas is 2-loss. They've got pretty much nothing to fight for. I mean, they've got nothing left to live for. They've got to win this if they want a shot at the Big 12 championship. So, but yeah, this is probably Oklahoma's ball game. Indiana at Penn State. Y'all, the line for this game is 32 in Penn State's favor. That's insane. I mean, I do agree with it. Don't get me wrong, but just seeing that line is insane. I think it'll be an annihilation, just like the Michigan game for Indiana. This team is awful. I mean, this Indiana team is horrible. The only game they played good was, I guess, against Ohio State and then against Louisville. That was it. Since then, I mean, they won in 4 overtimes against Akron, however you say. They got killed by Maryland, killed by Michigan, killed by Rutgers, and now they're going to get killed by Penn State. There is no upset here. There is no upset here in a million bajillion years. Give me Penn State. Georgia versus Florida. This is played on a neutral site, apparently. I did not know that. Good thing I saw. But yeah, this was looking. I thought it was at Florida. I was like, okay, this looks like it could potentially be like a potential upset game. But now that I know it's not at Florida, I'm a little skeptical. It is still being played in Florida, so you're probably going to see more Florida fans if they actually cared than Georgia fans. However, they are kind of crazy. They are crazy in the South about traveling to their college football games. It's kind of wild. I definitely see this one kind of being like the Kentucky game. Georgia lays the hammer down, especially since it's a major rivalry. This is a pretty big one. The line is only 14.5 for Georgia, which is kind of crazy because it's like, wow, you guys don't have faith in the number one team to annihilate this team. Yeah, give me a break. I mean, even Utah beat Florida by more than the line is. So I think Georgia will destroy this team, keep their number one spot. But yeah, sooner or later, Georgia will lose the number one spot. BYU versus Texas. This was another one I looked at the injury report on because Quinn Ewers got hurt in the Houston game, and I looked, it said, just like a couple websites said, he's going to have to miss at least a game, which would be this one. This means, honestly, BYU's probably going to deliver their strongest blow. I think BYU is just going to, try to play their best. They've got nothing else to live for. Again, another team that if they want to make the Big 12 championship, they've got to win this one. I think it'll be kind of like the same score as the Houston game. BYU looks to have an all right offense. A lot of their games are pretty high scoring, but their losses are pretty embarrassing. They got their ass kicked by Kansas at Kansas, and they got their ass absolutely pounded by TCU at TCU, who TCU just got destroyed by Kansas State. I mean, obliterated. That was back-to-back games as well for TCU. They kill BYU, and then they get killed by Kansas State. So maybe this could possibly be like a little bounce-back game for BYU. They did beat Texas Tech. But, yeah, I mean, I don't think Texas's defense will allow it. There's still plenty of weapons on Texas's offense. And it looks like people got hope in the backup. But judging off of the performance at Houston, I'm a little scared for this Texas team. Oregon at Utah. This one is very questionable. This one is a very questionable one. And I'm going to favor Utah. I'm going to go with the Utah upset. Oregon's favored by 7. But to be honest, I went ahead and I said, USC's going to win this one. And Utah ended up pulling off the upset. I know it's USC, but the thing is now that they have won that game, Utah 6-1, Oregon 6-1, and best believe this Utah Stadium is going to be a very difficult place to play in. And all of a sudden, now we're in another Pac-12 championship possibility right here. The last one was definitely Oregon at Washington. That one was a massive game, ended up being played down to 3 points with a last-second missed field goal by Oregon. We're in the same position here. However, I think this one is a little different. The reason why I think Oregon performed so well at Washington was because Washington was the favorite, and a lot of people favored Washington. I did see a lot of people say, hey, Oregon is going to win, but majority of people, I would say, favored Washington, which to me makes it seem like it just makes Oregon play stronger. Now the script has flipped, and it's at Utah, and Utah is a major underdog by 7 points. I think potentially, especially with, yes, Oregon kind of did dominate against Washington State, but they still had Washington State in that game. I think Oregon could struggle in this game and potentially lose it. Now, the thing is Oregon's got a sick defense, and I could be completely and utterly wrong about this. Oregon's got a much better defense than USC and a lot of teams in the Pac-12. But if Utah can play their best football and move the ball, that's where I say they'll go. I still don't think they'll be able to do that. I think it'll be a lower scoring game. But where I'm really staring down is Utah's defense. Utah's defense is one of the strongest, if not the strongest, in the Pac-12. If they can lock down, I'm not even going to say Bo Nix. I'm going to say if they can lock down Bucky Irving, if they can shut down the run game for this guy, they will have a much stronger chance at winning this game. One thing I noticed about the Washington and the Washington State game is that Bucky Irving has provided so much offense to these teams. I mean, if they can shut it down, that's a major portion of the offense. I do definitely believe Bo Nix is able to pass the ball. Do not get me wrong on that. But I feel like shutting down Bucky Irving would be like in your better interest than shutting down Bo Nix. Because if you shut down Bo Nix in the pass game, they're just going to run the ball down your throat. That's simply it. But if they shut down the run game, it's all through the pass game, which I think Utah would be much more like capable of stopping than the run game. If they can stop the run game, this becomes a slower, low-scoring game. I think Utah could potentially stun some people, but I also could be very wrong. So this one is kind of a shot in the dark for me. Pitt at Notre Dame. I feel like this one, Notre Dame's favored by 20. This one, to me, could find, I don't know if like anybody at Notre Dame really cares about it like this, but this could somehow be like a revengeance game on Louisville for Notre Dame. Pitt ends up beating the crap out of Louisville, and Notre Dame got the crap kicked out of them by Louisville. So now it's kind of like Notre Dame's going to just obliterate this team. Yeah, I don't think Pitt is a good team at all. I don't know how Pitt beat Louisville, but they ended up losing at Wake Forest, so I think Pitt is just horrendous this year. Give me Notre Dame by a lot. Duke at Louisville, interesting game. Now, I didn't look at the injury report on Riley Leonard, but honestly, I think with the way things went, we were already skeptical about him returning because of his injury at Notre Dame, and he came back, which to me just feels like they're playing him, but he's not ready. He ends up getting hurt. It looks really bad. I think he's going to be out for a little bit. Duke's got to go at Louisville. And I love this Duke team. I think they've got a very strong defense. They got a good running back, and they've just had their heavy set of bullshit this year applied to them. But I'm sorry, if anything won the Notre Dame game, it was the Louisville Stadium, the home environment, the crowd. So give me Louisville. Not as much as I would like it by Louisville being favored by 4. I think Louisville's offense will definitely struggle against this Duke defense, but it'll be the Duke offense that will just struggle. This could literally be all defensive points, like just turnovers being put in the red zone, scoring points and whatnot. I think Louisville will win it just because of the home environment. Tulane at Rice. A little bit of a questionable one here because Rice has not looked like the best team. They lose to UConn. They get killed by USF. And they get killed by Texas. But they've got one win that is kind of surprising. Now, I don't like this Houston team really at all. I think their win against West Virginia really just kind of slanted how the rest of the season will go. But Rice ends up beating Houston in double overtime. So still, for Rice, that's a good win. I feel like this one could be a little bit of a struggle. Could be an offensive matchup again. Tulane might need to watch themselves on this one. USC at Cal. Now, USC has lost 2 in a row. The last one being the more devastating one than the Notre Dame one, although the annihilation is embarrassing. I feel like losing at home to a last-second field goal to Utah has got to hurt. I mean, USC fans have got to be sick and tired of losing to Utah. But it's time for USC to bounce back, right? I'm a little scared to say so. Now, this Cal team they've had their embarrassing matchups. They lost 14-10 to Auburn at Cal. That's not the most impressive matchup. They only put up 14 points at Utah, not good. And they barely put away Arizona State by 3 in a low-scoring match of 21-24. But then they also have their moments where they shine. They put up 32 points against Washington, and they put up 40 points against Oregon State. One could even say they put up 58 against North Texas. But I think USC right now, it's going to be a definite matchup of the offenses. I think USC's just got the stronger offense. I don't think there's room for upset here. Maybe a higher scoring game, but yeah, give me USC. Washington at Stanford. Now, this is a little situation where I don't want to get tricked. So Stanford goes ahead and pulls off one of the biggest comebacks we've ever seen against Colorado. So I'm like, hey, maybe they could make it interesting against UCLA. Wrong. They end up getting killed. So I'm like, all right. Now I think they'll get killed by Washington. They're Stanford could potentially make things scary. However, the reason why I'm not necessarily going to look for that is because Washington just got scared by ASU. So Washington needs to make a name for themselves again. They need to obliterate a team to put themselves back up where they were previously. Washington should kill this team. If not, I would be kind of disappointed by the Huskies, honestly. Air Force at Colorado State. It took a lot of nerve favoring this Air Force team over Colorado State because Colorado State looks to be a scary team right now. Their only bad loss, I'd have to say, is at Utah State and probably getting or maybe tied with like the Washington State game where they got killed. Both of the games were obliterations. However, you got to note that they took Colorado into double overtime. They ended up pulling off a massive comeback against Boise State. This team looks like they provide competition to every team they play, whether it's their conference or Power 5. So I'm going to call for a close one, but Air Force should keep the undefeated season alive, considering Air Force looks to have a pretty strong defense. The only team to put up a decent amount of points against Wyoming, or against Air Force, spoilers, against Air Force is Wyoming. And remember, this Wyoming team beat Texas Tech, played Texas all 4 quarters, and ultimately ended up handing Fresno State their first loss. So give me Air Force by a small amount. Could be worse. I could be wrong about this prediction. It could be Air Force annihilation, or it could be Colorado's upset. I don't really know. Tennessee at Kentucky. I'm calling for the upset on this one. This Tennessee team has disappointed me again and again and again. I really had a lot of hype going for this Tennessee team into the season, but then against that Austin Peay game, it was like, uh-oh. And then they get killed by Florida at Florida. It's like, all right, Tennessee, so you guys are frauds. They barely survive A&M. They go into the half up 20-7 against Alabama. I'm like, I'm listening, and then they just don't do anything. I think this Tennessee team, I don't think they're going to be able to travel into Kentucky and win this game. I think Kentucky's got won the home field and a stronger team. If you look at the quarterbacking stats, Devin Leary is 106 for 195, almost 50%, 1,377 yards, 14 touchdowns, and 7 picks. Not the best quarterback stats you've ever seen. But Joe Milton III is 140 for 223, 1.535K yards, 12 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. Devin Leary is just 150 yards less than Joe Milton, 2 touchdowns more, and he's completed 36 less passes than Joe Milton. That's a little questionable for quarterbacking stats. However, Devin Leary has thrown more interceptions than Joe Milton. That's the one thing that Joe Milton's got going for him for me right now is his lack of interceptions thrown. The running game, Ray Davis leads by almost exactly 200 more yards. But the big one is that he has 8 touchdowns. Ray Davis has 8 touchdowns. The running back for Tennessee, Jalen Wright, has 1 touchdown. So, yeah, give me Kentucky in a close game, a fun game, and a major upset for Kentucky, probably to put them back into the rankings. Ohio State at Wisconsin at the preseason looks like a pretty interesting game. Now looks like it's just going to be Ohio State's ball game. I'm sorry, but this defense is probably the number 1 defense in the nation, and as long as you got Marvin Harrison Jr. on the offense, it's an annihilation. Give me Ohio State by a lot. Nothing to be said here. This team has proved themselves. They beat Notre Dame on the road, and they beat Penn State. They held Penn State to 6 points throughout the game. It took Penn State until the last minute of the game to score a touchdown. So give me Ohio State. Vanderbilt at Ole Miss. This has got to be a big bounce-back game for Ole Miss. They've looked pretty shitty in their past couple games. They had that major win against LSU, which was a pretty impressive one to say the least. And then they struggled against Arkansas, and then they struggled against Auburn. They've got to make a name for themselves again. This team feels very absent, and yet they're ranked number 12 in the country. They've got to make a bounce-back game. And I think Vanderbilt's the perfect team to do it against. This should not be a struggle at all for Ole Miss. Colorado at UCLA. UCLA's favored by 17. Now, the thing is Colorado's coming off of a bye week. Colorado's coming off of a bye week. They are trying to obviously come back from that major Stanford loss. I feel like Deion Sanders was not going to take it lightly on his team after how they performed. But let's be real, going into UCLA, we think UCLA is the better team in general. This will probably be a very, very full crowd because it's Deion Sanders, and probably last time these teams are going to play. UCLA is favored by 17. Yeah, I got them covering. UCLA should. It's in everybody's best interest to play Colorado and upset them. We saw it with Stanford. We saw it with Colorado State. We've seen it again and again and again. Give me UCLA. UNC at Georgia Tech. Now, it's like I want to favor UNC by a lot of points, but, obviously they did what they did. Now, I do believe Georgia Tech's win, we all know it was. Georgia Tech's win against Miami was a fluke, an absolute fluke. That was just one of the worst one of the worst coaching oopsies we've ever seen. So give me UNC, not as much as we like it by, but yeah, they take the dub. That's what's important for North Carolina now. Old Dominion at James Madison. I've got to include this one because they're top 25. Although I don't know shit about these teams. The only thing I know about Old Dominion is they played Wake Forest to 3. And the only thing I know about James Madison is they're undefeated. So, sure. Wacky little score of 20 points. James Madison covers, whatever. I don't know. I don't know shit about these teams. And finally, oh boy, this matchup looks very similar to a matchup we've seen, ladies and gentlemen. What was Oregon State favored by 3 points going on the road into? What game? I'll give you a couple seconds to think. The Washington State game. What happened in the Washington State game? They ended up winning by 3 points, and then they ended up losing 3 in a row. Well, U of A's got 3 losses, and Oregon State's favored on the road by 3.5. Is that not like the same idea? However, the difference about this one is Arizona's built up a name for themselves. It takes a lot from an ASU fan to stick up for U of A, but dude, I've watched this U of A team. They are they're really starting to show off. Jaden DeLora is the only reason they lost to Mississippi State and played Stanford to such a close ball game. Since then, they played Washington to 7 points. They played USC to triple overtime, which doesn't obviously look as good now, but still on the road at USC with a very, very strong quarterback. And then they finally get their moment of glory by going on the road to Washington State and obliterating them. Not only that, they just went on a bye week. Now, so did Oregon State. This one could be a really fun one. Both of these teams coming off of bye weeks. I think this is a very good Oregon State team. Strong defense, strong offense. I think this Arizona team is heavy offense, less defense. This could turn out to be a fun one. But I'm taking Arizona in a upset for the ages. Like, this is just one of the games where it's like there's a good team, like Washington State versus Cal, when Washington State was undefeated and Cal just turned on the afterburners and fucking destroyed them. I think this will be a fun, interesting game, and Oregon State will just slowly lose it over time more and more and more. I could be wrong about this, but I've got a lot of faith saying Arizona wins this one. And to be honest, I really hope they do, because I like enjoying, even though they're my rivals, I like watching enjoyable and fun football games. And this is definitely the brewing ground for that type of game. But with that being said, that is our last game of the week. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what your predictions are, like any hot takes you've got. A like and subscribe would help. A comment always helps, and that's all for me. Adios.